Okay, so now that we're recording, we'll get into what is your name and where do you work and what is your job title?
Hey, yeah. So my name is John Casiano. My job title is, I guess, a petroleum geologist. But now that I'm consulting and independent, I kind of wearing a bunch of hats. I am my own company. So I'm my marketer, my accountant, my software analyst, my R&D. I'm everything right now. So it's a little complicated, but for a long time, I was with a small exploration and production company in San Antonio. And my final job title there was senior geologist. So it's mostly responsible for certain assets geologically in the Williston Basin in North Dakota. So I guess I talked, yes, who my employer is again. So my employer is me, myself. The name of my company is Utopia Bridge LLC. I'm looking at the list of questions. I'm not sure if you asked those yet.
Yes, I'll ask them
Okay.
as they come. So what areas within geosciences do you use in your current job?
um, so my current job, I mean, when I'm looking at a potential prospect area or when I'm consulting and putting well plans together, drilling plans, I'm looking at a lot of stratigraphy, a lot of petrophysics analysis based on well log analysis. I'm looking at, I guess, a sedimentary deposition environments. I'm just trying to think of of the potential of oil and gas being present. And I'm also thinking about, I don't know, it's pretty much what am I not thinking about when I'm going about my job. It's a lot of just geochemistry, it's geophysics, it's paleontology sometimes when I'm looking at reef deposits. It's a kind of all entailing job sometimes, and sometimes I can be very specific though as far as just looking at well logs and picking markers on well logs. Just doing stratigraphy projects. So, does that answer the question?
Yes, I think a lot of different areas of geosciences apply. So is there an area of specialization maybe within petroleum geology that you have?
I think for a long time I consider myself an expert now in operations geology as far as well plan development and geosteering. I for assets in the Gulf Coast, and then in the Williston Basin, of course, in North Dakota, some in the Delaware Basin, in the Permian, and West Texas. And we kind of, just the experience of some of those areas is different. You talk about drilling up in the Williston Basin, and it's more a regional dip, so it's not very challenging. Well, it's challenging only because the target zone is pretty thin. We're looking at an 8 to 10 foot target zone up there. So we're drilling down 10,000 feet and trying to land in a 10-foot window and then staying in that window for another 10,000 feet laterally. When we're landing and drilling in the Eagle Ford down in the Gulf Coast, it's challenging because well, for some people who kind of have to scrounge and to get acreage together, we ended up with a lot of not the most ideal acreage. So there's a lot of faulting due to salt domes and just down to the coast faulting that made steering and landing as well as in particular formations challenging. Also, so besides being an expert, I think in well plan development and geosteering, I think I'm kind of, I don't know if it's pigeonholed or not, but I've got a lot of experience just in unconventionals looking for prospects and I guess oil and gas reservoirs where historically by conventional means, these reservoirs technically didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago.
Okay, so moving on to your background, when did you first get interested in geoscience?
So I guess I don't know, this story might be a little unique because everybody I talked to, I'm envious of them because my friends in geology, it seemed like they knew about geology and they knew they wanted to be a geologist pretty early on in their lives. Where myself, I kind of didn't. I mean, I've always been, into being outdoors and stuff like that, but putting it together, it's like, I didn't know it was actually real science. I didn't know there was real industry. I didn't know there were jobs you could have doing it. So I didn't find it, I guess, until I was in college. I kind of took I started as an English major and a political science major and marketing. And I finally registered at one of the community colleges. And y'all are probably familiar with it, Northwest Vista College. And I took a course. It was a historical geology with Dr. Nick DeLillo. And yeah, it changed my life. I think he was super excited about the subject. And that first day I sat in there and my mind was just blown, the geologic time scale. And it just seemed it was, I don't know, it made sense to me just because, I was familiar with the outdoors. I'm seeing these formations and stratigraphy in my mind. And it all kind of it all made sense that day. And then the kicker was he brought up a field trip. So I was sold, I was in. So I took that course. I finished that course historical and I took the physical course that they also offer, and then I transferred to UTSA. And then kind of tried to catch up at UTSA as much as I could. And that kind of led to some interesting course, interesting course load, I should say. But so that's what got me interested in geology first. I just, it made sense in the building blocks and how you can, just how formations kind of build on each other and all those concepts and everything build on each other. And it was nice too to taking paleontology and some of these other courses, and then finally taking geomorphology with Dr. Haschenberger there. I think it was for first year at UTSA, and seeing all the things we've been studying in the subsurface kind of be pointed out and explained on the surface, and with river morphology and everything else. It was kind of the first course I was like, okay, this is still, I'm still on the right track because it's still useful to me.
Okay, so you ended up getting your degree from UTSA, and did you further your education after this?
So as I was kind of wrapping up my last year or two at UTSA, I got a job or sort of internship. Sorry, let me turn that off. At the local geological log library, and from there, I that's pretty much when I got interested in petroleum. But from there, I got hired and picked up just with my bachelor's at Abraxas, is where I was for over 12 years here in town. And then I started my career there as a geotech. And I worked there for probably, I don't know, it was like 4 years or so, maybe almost 4 years. And then my manager at the time was teaching graduate courses at UTSA, Dr. Lee Billingsley. And he came into the office and suggested that I go ahead and enroll in his class because it's worthwhile for me to go ahead and take the course, because it'll be better for for my career in the industry. So I always like to joke with him, telling me kind of made me an offer that I couldn't refuse. Because at the time I had a 2-year-old at home. We were busy working. We were drilling wells 24/7. And my wife was extremely pregnant, but I was blessed enough that Abraxas offered to cover the costs for grad school. So I agreed, and that went back to grad school for it was almost, I think it was like 5 years. I don't know, maybe Dr. Day can clear that up. Yeah, it took a while doing one course a semester, and doing my field work was great because I did a project out in Big Bend National Park. And that was a lot of fun going out there on pretty much my free time, my vacation days. I spent a few Thanksgivings and summers out there that were really, really cool. And then that was fun until it came to processing all the samples in the lab, and that was less fun. And then, so I went back to grad school and finished in 2017. And after that, at Abraxas, my manager saw it fit that I become a real senior geologist by then. It was kind of odd because I was doing the same job as a senior geologist as I'd been doing the past few years. But anyway, it was a pay increase, so that was good. And then I don't know if I'm also, I guess we'll get to it later. I don't know if that answers the question about education. I am in another program right now, but I think it goes to your question at the end about recommended supplemental education.
Okay. So how did you choose your career pathway into petroleum
Um,
geology?
well, I when I was working there at the law library, I don't know, some universities, and it's not UTSA only, but I think they don't do a good job showing students all of their options, everything that's option or available in the community, whether group, we've got foundations in physics and sciences and math and everything else. So before I started that, I really had no clue what I was going to do with my degree. And honestly, I guess kind of naive. I really wasn't thinking about it or worried about it too much either. But I'm sorry, I got a message. Connection's unstable. I don't know if you can hear me. So when I started there, again, I met some petroleum geologists, and they would come in. They were independent members, and they would come in, make their maps, pull some well off, and then go fishing and hunting all the time. So it's like, I think I can get into this. So and then it wasn't only that I can see they were making their maps and building these prospects. They really had to know, it was kind of all entailing, from the well, the better ones are the bigger projects were better, of course, because they started with the kind of the basin analysis, depositional environments, sequence stratigraphy, and then petrophysics. It was big concept, big pictures, and and then sometimes too there were in consortiums where they were taking core and these with these big drilling rigs and drilling down, taking core like from from the Mississippian or the Devonian, and then mapping all the way up to the Cretaceous. Like that was more interesting to me than some of the other industries around. We need water, we need mines, we need all sorts of materials. But to me, I think that the big picture and the day to day or the options of what I can look at petroleum are kind of almost limitless. So yeah, besides meeting some of the people in the industry and that aspect of kind of being all everything involved in geology or in these projects, it kind of really got me hooked in the petroleum aspect of geology.
So that's nice. So you have sort of some anecdotes that influenced you, kind of like you're giving this anecdote today. So, what do you view as the most important component in your background that has facilitated your career trajectory? Maybe a credential, training, or another qualification, like a license as a geoscientist?
I guess nothing specific. Well, I mean, now that I've stepped out as a consultant on my own, working as independent, I have sought a couple of certifications. So I'm registered as a CIPES member, and I'm also registered as a certified petroleum geologist through AAPG. And those are helpful. I have those now in my my CV, my signature, and everything else. It helps to get the business and people recognize it. But more than that, just my background, what's helped me the most in my career is sort of like I guess it's common amongst us geologists, and like I mentioned before, our sort of versatility. We have our backgrounds in chemistry and physics and math, and I guess a natural curiosity has helped a bunch, and sort of the versatility, like I said, and there's just problem solving skills, not, when you come across a problem to look at it and recognize, okay, well, I don't know the answer now, but I can search. I know how to find the answer. Just the ability to, and I guess I'm sure there's a word for it, but I guess grit's a word that comes to mind sometimes. Having just a positive attitude, a positive outlook on life. It helps you be employable, that's for sure. People don't want to work with someone who constantly can't do things, or just kind of, almost to me now, it seems like choose not to do things. But that's very important. People like to, they want to work with people who they're comfortable with. People want to work with others who can do things, who are positive about trying to do things. And that's something that too, I don't want to discourage people, young people or students, from not trying. You're not working for a certain company or get hired for certain people because you're going to have too many questions. You're not going to know anything. But ask questions, be curious. And a lot of times, if especially if you're in the right spot, your manager or your colleagues and coworkers will appreciate the questions, because it'll remind them, of what they're doing and their purpose of job, and they most of them appreciate, being able to reach out and teach and have teaching moments with new employees. And so I'm not sure if that answered all your questions or not, but that those things have helped me in my career for sure so far.
Okay, so now we'll move on into talking more about a day in your work life. So, what kind of activities fill up your work day?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
You missed a question.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, okay, so what kind of activities fill up your work day?
Oh, okay. Well, I guess just for example, a lot of emails, reading, research, and then I guess also, I'm actually actively, like, this week I haven't got to it today, but we just got surface permits approved for a new set of wells in the Wilson Basin. So I'll be loading logs into my geological workstation, and then picking tops from our target formation up to the surface, um, labeling formations that the engineers are usually looking for reasons of for drilling purposes, to make sure they have the correct fluid weight, so you're not having any issues, so that the hole stays nice and clean as they get down deep. So I'll be picking tops, going down into our landing zone, and then I'll be providing the engineers for our landing depth. And then the depths, I guess we're just starting out, so it doesn't have to be very specific. One depth for one of the wells landing, and then probably one to the middle and one to the end. So I'll be putting those together just on spreadsheets and submitting those. Also, I'm working on a project in the Permian and on the Eastern Shelf. And that project, for instance, I need to get to it also this week, is we just had some petrophysical work done. So they provided us with new curves, new LES files from well log analysis. So I'll have to import those curves into a cross section of wells that I have already created through our asset acreage. And then so that's some of the kind of basic things that I'll be working on, and that I kind of do off and on as a part of consulting and being an independent geologist, petroleum geologist.
Okay, and then how have your activities in your workday evolved over time through your career transition?
Um, Over time, it's I don't like it's kind of neat because you start your career, whatever you start doing, or at least in my case, starting as a geotech. I guess in some bigger companies, when you graduate to senior geologist, you get a geotech assigned to you. Like if you work for a Pioneer or Exxon, or I guess that's the same company now, or some other company, you have other people doing like the loading the data, loading logs, picking tops, digitizing curves. But I started doing all that myself, so. And I work for a smaller company and I work for myself. So I'm still kind of doing those things, but it's the things that I'm just constantly just adding on. So, initially when I first started, it was, loading well data onto a map and then loading well logs and then picking formation tops and then picking pay zones and then eventually building large structure maps or small structure maps or larger structure maps and then mapping whole basins. I guess lately though too, it's my work's kind of it gets into there's a lot of uncertainty in unconventional reservoirs, so that's all kind of evolved to okay, like I know the basics, on well log analysis, I know what a good pay zone should look like, and I know what it shouldn't look like, and I can kind of see I search kind of like a detective. I look through all these clues. That maybe in an old drill stem test or an old mud log sample description, or it's that old term, the devil's in the details. And for so long, there's so many wells and so many people and so much work to do sometimes that a lot of things are overlooked. So I think through my career, I can definitely see now that I can spot and see things. I don't know if it's more clearly or not, but I can see if something's out of place, something's out of order, or something. Makes me investigate more, and so I can kind of determine, like what was really happening here, or if there's potential for exploitation or exploration, or maybe a discovery in the future. So it's a concept, just like the rest of geology. I think you start with stratigraphy, you start with paleo, and you kind of you build out this sedimentology and then basin analysis and sequence strat and geochem, and it all kind of builds on each other. It builds on itself, and eventually, I guess eventually you're like Dr. Tom Ewing, and you just have it. You're just built. I mean, you know everything.
So, what are some geoscience related tools that you use in your work?
Geoscience related tools. Um, I guess most of the tools I'm using these days, unless I'm out in the field, is just my geologic workstation, Petra. I've used Kingdom suites in the past for seismic analysis. I've used research like some the AAPG for me as petroleum geologists. Getting on there, looking for papers, and also I've managed to collect tons of books. So something that I guess people kind of discard these days, but these books were instrumental in discovering new techniques, new research, and geology doesn't change that much. So a lot of these older books and I collect and keep still have a lot of good answers, and sometimes they're even better answers, or they're better explained than newer books. So and then in the field, if I'm doing a field trip, or if I'm investigating an outcrop that's related to the reservoir I'm searching on, I use just a classic rock hammer field book for field notes, hand lens. I don't know. I guess that's all I can think of right now. Sure, I'm missing some stuff, but yeah, I mean, it's computers, databases, internet, pretty common things.
Okay, and then what kind of analyses do you perform in your work?
Well, I guess in the end analysis that I've taken for when I'm consulting and steering and planning wells, I'm sort of giving estimates or predicting what I believe the formation is going to do ahead of the bit, if that makes sense. So based on current data as the well is drilling, and based on structure maps ahead of time, pre-drill structure maps, I'm kind of analyzing what I believe to be, the best path for the drill bit going forward. So that's kind of an interesting job, because it's constant. That bit is drilling sometimes 100 feet an hour, sometimes more, 300 feet an hour. So we're constantly getting data and surveys. So I'm constantly having to look at it and update it. But so it's constant. You're always analyzing the MWD data, the measurement while drilling tool data. You're looking at the mud log gas samples. You're looking at descriptions that the mud loggers are taking and giving to you. And most of that too is, unless I'm on the rig, most of the time that job is done through the computer. I can see the live feed. I can talk to the mud loggers and NWD on the phone. So that's kind of a constant analysis when we're drilling those wells. And as far as prospecting analysis, that's trying to take all of the variables that you have. Sometimes the data is missing. Well, I mean, of course, sometimes if you're lucky, you have seismic. Other times you just have kind of sparse old well data, old well logs from like the 50s, 60s, and then but you might have some newer well, like in this case, the one we have two wells that were drilled in the 90s, so they were somewhat modern logs. So we're able to do some petrophysical analysis. And I'm not a petrophysicist, so like we had to outsource for that. So we went to Schlumberger, who has a petrophysicist who's kind of an expert in that particular field and area, to look at our logs for us. But even then, they can only tell us what they can as a petrophysicist. It's the petroleum geologist, or I guess the development geologist, to kind of take that data and plug it in the best I can to the data we do have already in the surrounding wells and the structure map. And based on offset production, you take all these parts and pieces and try to put the best picture possible that you can. And hopefully, if enough people agree with you and you have enough success, you can get some wells drilled. So it's constant. It's sort of constant analysis. Like every time you put data in, you have to look at it and analyze it. It can be a lot, but just step by step. And it's a challenging. It can be challenging sometimes. It's like I said before, you're thinking of all these aspects of geology when you're trying to put these prospects together, and you're doing a lot of analysis. And I guess I don't do too much petrophysical analysis or seismic analysis myself. I've got a lot of general experience in it, but I'm not down to the small details of those fields. But those are all very lucrative right now. I know there's several even oil majors right now. I think BP and Exxon and Chevron have public ads out for petrophysicists, because they're just very in demand right now. Not only for petroleum, but also for geothermal and carbon capture. And really, that petrophysical data from well logs is something that's kind of neat and should be evaluated. There should be experts. There should be a lot of experts looking at that.
Okay, so with these analyses that you do, they're more just interpretive of the data, or are they computational or graphical?
There a lot of it's interpretational, but I do submit when we're doing geosteering and well development. I use my geological software Petra to map those things out and to chart things out. The data analysis sometimes, with the petrophysical analysis, there is some math, and we're calculating oil or water saturations. There's some math, but even then, so Like, it depends on the project, how detailed you are, how much analysis you're doing. If I'm not doing a ton of maps, I mean, well, I mean, I'm constantly always updating my map on the computer, but it wasn't 10 or 15 years ago. And I guess some older geologists, they'll still crank out maps over and over and over. Every time they change something or put something out. Some people are just used to working that way. But usually, with your data and your workstations, you can work on something all day long and just change the structure line, a couple feet, or you could change the physical pay and the formation, 10 feet or thicken it 20 feet or whatever it is, but it's just you're just constantly building on the story. It's not, a lot of it's not starting from scratch a lot, but I guess it's more, what I'm doing right now, it seems to be more interpretive than analytical, but um, it's, it's a bunch of different things.
Okay, and then what new skills have you gained in your career since completing your education?
I, I mean, I think pretty much everything in, like they said, in petroleum, I didn't have a lot of, there was no petroleum class. I know now there's a petroleum class, there's advanced petroleum. So pretty much everything I know now in the industry has been gained, since my education was over at UTSA. I guess when I did go back for grad school, advanced stratigraphy, and there was also the advanced petroleum course were very useful, of course. But I mean, there's just a ton of skills since UTSA. I mean, the mapping. I know there's a lot of there's a lot of universities out there that utilize that, and I think this past year the field camp crew went out, took a bunch of data, and they were able to use some mapping software and make some maps and do some analysis. So it's just, and there's software, there's geosteering software, there's geological software, there's no, it's a lot. I can't think of anything specific besides saying everything I know because I've learned since school, but pretty much. I know UTSA does a good job too with hydrology. There's probably a lot of stuff that you can carry with you from hydrology, but mostly just what I brought with me from UTSA is just curiosity and just being determined to get things done. And that stayed with me. But as far as particular skills since school, I mean, it's everything.
So, what other STEM disciplines are applied in your work, such as physics, chemistry, computer science?
Yeah, so chemistry for sure. Geochemistry has been a big deal with isotope analysis these days. People are studying XRF, XRD mineralogy to try to determine proper drilling targets, proper to kind of identify reservoirs. Physics especially is a good one right now too. With hydraulic fracturing, operators want to know the best direction to drill a well, the best direction to perforate the formation, the best direction to perforate. So they try to optimize where they think the direction the rocks will break. So that's a lot of physics, geophysical work. Yeah, there's a lot of rock mechanics have to do with physics. Yeah, and computers and data management. I think, yeah, in geology, or at least in petroleum, there's use for people not only who are geologists but have the extra skills like that.
Okay. And then lastly, what courses or skills do you recommend to students wanting to work in your area of geoscience?
Yeah, okay. So I was going to mention this earlier, but now I am. Well, in geoscience particularly, it's one of those things that I don't know if anybody wants to be in petroleum. I guess it kind of carries through with any industry. you get done with your bachelor's, and then some people carry on and get their master's, which, my mentor, my boss at Lee Billingsley would say, your master's is really your professional's degree. And then, so you can get a long way with that, whether, you're going to work in hydrology or environmental or petroleum, but you get to a certain point, a certain level in your career where you kind of plateau. And what happens after that is if you want to move on, you need to become a manager or, manager level. So you need accounting skills, you need marketing skills, you need finance skills, you need economic skills. So I kind of saw this coming towards the end of my career at Abraxas. So I'm also enrolled right now in a engineering program with another university that kind of adds some of those subjects, just because I pretty much doing it now just because I really try to avoid it the whole beginning of my career. But I could see, it's important to know those things. So it's weird. It's not something within geology to supplement, your career in geology, but to supplement your career, or at least a longer career, in any industry of geology, then you should really consider, a business minor or business secondary degree. That'll probably help you along, especially when you start getting, past mid-career points.
Okay, awesome. So now we can open the floor for questions from students or faculty.
John, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi. How are you, Jason?
Hey, John, good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
You look tall sitting down. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, maybe the room is really small, but it is actually.
Okay.
That's funny. You mentioned Dr. DeLillo. I also was in college, didn't know what I was going to major in, and I needed to take a science course and walk into geology class, and it's Dr. DeLillo. So I ended up getting an undergraduate degree in geology. Anyway, that's funny.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a little bit more about last time I talked to an independent geologist. I asked him what software applications he used, and he said none. And so I thought, well, that's very interesting. Still doing everything by hand, or well, I don't know. But so I wanted to get a little more info from you about what you think an independent petroleum geologist, sort of your core applications that you think one would need to do decent.
Yeah, my just go-to bread and butter is Petra. I guess it was IHS, now it's S&P, but the Petra workstation. It does. You can do structure maps, isopack maps. You can build great cross sections. You can. It doesn't do great with seismic. That's the one thing. But yeah, if I sometimes. That's the only workstation I need for, unless I'm looking at seismic, or unless I'm steering wells, then I can get by with just Petra. And there's and we can talk later. I don't want to get too specific and waste time, but there's a cool new company that kind of leases out software by the hour, or by the week. It's a really cool thing. So if you want to, we can catch up later. You can shoot me an email and I can tell you more information about that if you're getting close to stepping out as independent.
Thank you, John. All right. Yeah. Sounds good.
Other question?
I guess one thing I wanted to ask was like, has there ever been an experience that you know of like where something's gone like wrong, and like what precautions do you guys take so you make sure that nothing really goes wrong?
Are you talking about like safety issues, or just like,
Yeah, like when you guys drill like wells and stuff like that.
Yeah, the state and the EPA, and even operators in house, have a lot of safety. I mean, you can't, you can't go 10 feet or 10 minutes without, safety meeting, safety talk, safety emails. That being said, things still, there's accidents still happen. Of course they're rare, and they become, more and more rare, every day, every week. The industry is getting pretty good on being, safe, clean, and efficient for everybody. I guess I can't, well, we had an issue with one of the wells we drilled 3 or 4 years ago, where the well had a blowout, hit a massive gas pocket, but due to precautions and meetings and everything else, we didn't have anybody hurt or injured. So it's a thing, but just like not only in petroleum, but every other industry, construction and I'm sure bio research and everything else, there's safety issues, and there's things to, there's safe ways to remediate that. I don't think anybody runs a business where they know people are gonna definitely get hurt every day. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Dr. Godet.
Thanks, Aisha. Hi, John. Good to see you. I have a quick question. You mentioned earlier on that after you got your BS, you went back to school to get your master, thanks to Lee, right? And you mentioned that at that time you were only able to take one class a semester because you had to manage your personal, professional life, and student life. So I was wondering, now 6 years down the road after you graduated, if you had to do it again, would there be anything else you would do differently to, and don't be mad at me, but to be more efficient in a way? Sorry. And you've been efficient, don't get me wrong.
You already said it, too late. No, I mean, yeah, if I could go, to do it all again, starting when I was in third grade, and like I would have went and found a rock hammer, and then I would have been I was started in grade school. I would have been focused on getting into a great petroleum geology university and everything else. And then, but something I think what you're referring to mostly is sort of my maybe would I recommend that people start a family and start a full-time job and then go back to school? I understand people have to do it. I had to do it, but it brought on a lot of extra stress and a lot of uncertainty, and I would not recommend it. But with the fantastic. But it was just, and it was slow. It was another thing. I wasn't in a rush though either to find a job afterwards. So I took my time, and then one class a semester. So I think a lot of it is when students they don't have a job, so they're in a rush to get done and get to work because bills start calling, and I understand that too. It's we all have our priorities, we all have responsibilities, but I think if you really enjoy geology and you really it makes you happy and you can see yourself doing it for the rest of your life, make it a priority. Make your work a priority. If you can, behind your paying job and your family, your kids, and then you can make something else your priority. But if you don't have all those things, take time, make the effort, go on extra field trips, go to conferences, go to the happy hours, go to the luncheons, spend extra time with the professors. Yeah, so I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it did. Thank you.
In Ireland?
Yes, I just wanted to ask you, like, what's your favorite project you have, or your project research that you have done so far?
So far, one of my favorite projects, I was blessed and glad to that the Glen Rose formation research I did at Big Bend National Park. I said something that, you know, I'll carry with me for a long time. That was a lot of fun. Like I said, that was, well, even the lab work was memorable, but that was something cool. And then, you know, there's been a few things at Abraxas, and one thing in particular that I'm kind of still working on. It's, you know, it's neat to, after you have some experience and, you know, being in an industry like petroleum, where you can solve puzzles and see things. There's so much rock out there and so many reservoirs, there's so much potential that you can see things and find things that no one else has maybe seen. Well, they've probably seen it, but they don't realize what they're looking at. And that's always neat to me. You know, I can see, you know, when you're looking at projects, you're looking at fields, even the ones that were discovered, and you can kind of go through and say, hey, look, you know, there's something here. And it's just like pretty much every project that sort of eureka moment, or that moment of discovery, it kind of happens constantly, even though, you know, it's not a real discovery until you get a well drilled and, you know, money in your pocket. But I think, you know, if you look close and you're positive, you can see a lot of, you know, really cool things every day. So, you know, it's, to me, it's, you know, that the course is that grad school project in Big Bend, and then you know, we're looking at, you know, doing exploration, looking at exploratory new projects.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Caleb?
All right. Hello, Mr. Casiano. I was just wanting to say thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. And as someone who's looking to go into the a career in petroleum geology, I just wanted to ask, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in your career?
Really, right off the bat, I remember when I started out, it was kind of overwhelming, and that was a challenge. But, you know, as you know, you get in, you have a manager and everybody you talk to, you start going to the luncheons, the happy hours, and it seems like everybody just knows everything. They're so much smarter than you, but it just comes with time. You know, people will start their careers and they're looking at particular formations and particular oil fields, and they're looking at it, you know, every day of their lives. And then it's like that Malcolm Gladwell book, you know, you need your 10,000 hours to be an expert or whatever. And everybody you talk to in petroleum seems to be an expert. So that was, I saw, like, looking back, and back then that was an obstacle for me before, you know, I realized that, you know, as I sat there for a year, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and now I don't know, 15 years, that it's something that kind of comes with time. But as long as you know, keep asking questions and keep researching and keep reading and keep putting yourself, you know, in good situations, you know, with people who know more than you, who are people who are, you know, willing to help out. I see that as an obstacle maybe I had early on, but I wasn't very much long. I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years into the industry, I kind of realized that and moved on past it. And then a sort of another obstacle I found was sort of what I was talking about while I'm back in school again. There's a lot of people that grew up in the industry. You know, I have a lot of colleagues that, you know, their dads or moms worked in the oil field, or their grandparents were in it, and they just have like this, you know, it's just family knowledge that they've had since growing up. And I found myself kind of, you know, feeling like you know, I have to challenge myself, or I feel a challenge to have to keep up and, you know, talk about, you know, things that aren't necessarily geology related in oil and gas, or petroleum. You know, talking about leasing and money and funding and things like that. And I think that's still an obstacle for me. Those are still things that I end up in meetings or sitting in conversations like, holy crap, you know, put them in my notebook down with some words or terms that I don't recognize. And it's an obstacle, but, you know, obstacles are good, you know, so you recognize them and you move past them, you learn it. So those are, I guess, kind of two, you know, the obstacle of feeling that everybody's smarter, and then also this obstacle of, you know, in petroleum specifically, I think, you know, there's so many different business, you know, there's a lot of things in business and leasing and land and real estate and things like that also get kind of jumbled in with petroleum. And that's an obstacle. But as far as geology goes, you know, geologically, you know, there's books, there's people you can talk to, there's workshops, there's conventions, you know, there's everything you want or need to know in petroleum you have access to, and you should be able to find.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
And Dr. Goody?
Yeah, I'm coming for the second round. I wonder, can you further comment on the value of networking and teamwork in your job?
Sure. I guess the value of networking, I'll start with that. So I've worked at Abraxas for 12 years, and you know, it's nice when you work, you know, for a company, you kind of, as soon as you start there, you kind of have a local network. But you know, with petroleum being such a, I don't know, I don't want to use the word volatile, people use it though, but it's, you know, there's busts and booms, it's not, you know, it's not as consistent as other jobs, I should say. Knowing that, I wanted to be sure that, you know, I had options. So I've spent a lot of my career and a lot of my extra time networking and meeting people. And it's actually, you know, not, I know for some people it's challenging. For me, is, you know, I like meeting new people and, you know, talking about new things and learning new things all the time. So it kind of worked out, except for, you know, sometimes, you know, if I had work to do or just a long week or something like that, it's tough to get out to some of these events, but, it's, you know, I've never went to an event and got home afterwards and regretted going. You know, I always met somebody new, or always ended up talking about something and learned something that I didn't know before. But anyway, just going back to when I left Abraxas, I didn't really know. I knew I wanted to go independent. I knew I wanted to be a consultant. I knew the way that ended, I didn't want to go and work for, just walk into another company again. So because of my network, I knew who needed a geologist. I knew where to get data. I knew who to call for discount on my workstation. I knew who to call if I needed money. I know who to call if I want to get, after I finally get my first prospect together, I know who to call who's got money who would want to invest in drilling a new well. And all those things, if I hadn't spent time these years involved with STG at South Texas Geological Society and the AAPG, American Association of Petroleum Geologists, then you know, it was a challenge just to be technically, you know, unemployed there. But I had this foundation, or, you know, these connections to this network, you know, to fall back on. And I don't know what it would have been like if I hadn't spent all this time doing this. If I didn't have anybody to call, if I didn't know where to start to find a new job, if I didn't, I mean, it would be like starting from scratch again, like, you know, leaving UTSA back the first time. So the value of networking, like, I really can't put a price tag on it. You know, there's people who work for companies who, you know, there's conferences that go on across the country, but if the company doesn't pay for it, then like, oh, well, we're not going to go because the company's not paying for it. Or you work for yourself, and it's like, no, it's kind of, you know, too expensive. Or you're a student, like the university's not paying for it. But to me, you know, make the investment in yourself. It costs money, yeah, it does, but you know, you never know how or when it's going to pay off, but it will one day. I mean, you know, you won't see it in the bank, but you'll see it in, you know, new friendship, new knowledge. And then, what was the second part of your question?
No, I think you covered everything, John.
Okay.
And Dr. Haschenberger?
Yes, if you were going to hire someone in your company, what things would you be looking for with their resumes? Like, what would make a candidate stand out to you?
Yeah, great question. I would like to see that they've completed, you know, research projects, they've done field work. I want to see that they took the time. I know, you know, at universities it's not always offered, you know, if it's not a part of a class, I would like to see maybe a student that took initiative, that, you know what, I have some skills, I've got some mapping skills. When I go out to my local city park and, describe these formations, when I go look at these fossils and, get online, go do a Google search just like they do in class to write a report. You can publish those things or put them together at least, and you can submit them to the STGS bulletin, just as an article. There was a student UTSA, Sebastian, I can't remember his last name. He was from Colombia, but when he was at UTSA, he went on a STGS field trip and then wrote a report about it. And then I got in the bulletin. And if I saw somebody that did something like that, and that was in the resume and they included it, then that would be awesome. That would be spectacular. I would like to see students or, young professionals, whoever I'm hiring, going out there and like doing extra things that they don't have to. And it's kind of funny, because that, it only benefits them, and because they're gonna learn more, and they're gonna learn how to put these projects together. Because I know, unless you go to grad school, you really don't have like a big research project as an undergrad. And I know a lot of people want to try to get into the industry, right after undergrad. But I think that that's sort of what's missing when you without your master's, you don't have that experience to put a whole project together. I guess some other things that I would also like to see is I don't know, so a student that's just well-rounded, that took not only did good in geology classes, but maybe someone who had an accounting background. That would be helpful to me right now. A finance background, some things that make them stand out, some accolades and things of that nature. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Any other questions from the students? Well, I hate to hold everybody over, but I do have a question. In your well log data, is the data coming from just one tool that is reading into the well, or is there multiple tools as, I don't know, the data is being collected going into the well? Maybe there's one above the surface, there's one beneath the surface. I want to know how this works.
Yeah, no, so there's oh gosh, I don't even know how many tools they have now to run down a hole. But most, I guess the generic tool assembly these days are so after the well is drilled, in a perfect world, you do an open hole well logging. So you have on the back of a wireline truck, they'll drop a tool just down the hole, so it's tied down the line. They'll drop the tool down, and on that tool they can measure gamma ray, and resistivity most of the time. So that's a triple combo. It's a generic term for those 3 points of data. So every rock has gamma. Actually, everything has a gamma ray signature. But then you have your porosity and resistivity. So generically, for most, especially like conventional reservoirs, when you'll be looking for the gamma ray for low gamma ray counts, and that would kind of represent a sand or something with more porosity, along with. So when you see that, usually you have more porosity because it's a sandy, cleaner, lower gamma ray. And you also look for a higher resistivity, because the higher the resistivity, the less conductive it is. So there's less water. So we're not looking for water or petroleum. So you're looking for the high, low gamma ray, high porosity, high resistivity. So then, but there's also sonic tools that you can measure porosity, and then sonic tools can be used to be tied into seismic. There's nuclear magnetic resonance tools now that can determine the types of fluids that are downhole. There's dipole meters. There's a whole slew of logs and tools that you can use now, and that's mostly for like conventional straight down the hole wells. But then also when you're drilling laterals, you can also get a tool that's kind of I don't know, I think they can get them now, they're like 20 feet behind the bit or so. But they also take gamma ray log, that was the most common. So then you can use that gamma ray to help you correlate to the vertical log nearby. So you can see, so it's like if this portion is 10 feet and the top of this formation has like a 200-point gamma ray, with the bottom of the formation has like 20-foot gamma ray. When that well is drilling laterally in this formation and it starts to drift up, that tool will pick up that gamma ray. So then you'll know that bit is in the higher gamma ray section. And if you know if that's the top of your producing pay zone, you can relate, or you can send new targets to the drilling team and tell them that they need to come back down below that higher gamma ray point. So that's the main tool or log that's used in lateral drilling, and that's neat too, because that's a live connection from the bit to the drilling rig, and then when that's hooked up to the internet, and I can see as they're drilling that gamma ray come across my computer. I mean, you can get on apg.com, or you can search Schlumberger, and you can get, there's dozens of types of well logs or tools that they use now to analyze a formation.
Okay, and this is a slow process or a quick process?
So depending on the tool, if you're running one of those nuclear magnetic resonance tools, then it has to go pretty slow. I'm not sure how, I don't know how slow exactly, but engineers and people who are in charge of money don't like it because it usually takes like a whole day to run that tool through 1,000 feet. So in their minds, the rig costs money. Like that, the second that rig gets out there, I mean, you have all the people working on the rig, you have all the people standing by waiting, you have, trucks, you got energy, this rig and the whole, the whole drilling area, the whole drilling pad is costing the operator $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a day. So when you want to run a special tool, it's going to take a whole day. So you're not only looking at the expense of the tool, you're looking at the expense of having everybody sitting around for a whole day. So the NMR, I know, is one of the slower ones. Resistivity, gamma ray, those are pretty quick. Because as fast as, I think pretty much as fast as you can get that tool down, they can pull it as fast as they pull it up. It's not too long, but every one of those tools, it kind of differs, and based on the engineers, based on the data that the engineers have, if we're running a tool, it's the Schlumberger has tools, you usually go through them as a service company. Schlumberger, Halliburton, and there's a lot of smaller companies depending on which basin you're working, but they all have their own engineers, and they tell you the limitations and how fast you're able to record the data.
Okay, thank you. That answers that for me. Are there any other questions from any of the students?
I have a comment for some more questions or a request, I guess.
And was there anything that any last advice you wanted to give the students?
Well, I think I kind of covered everything. I think everybody got what they needed, but I do have one last thing. I'm the general chair of an upcoming geological conference in April 10th through the 12th. It's the GCAGS GeoGolf 2024. Oh, I missed it. There you go. But the theme this year we decided is going to be the School of Rock, expert geology with a soundtrack calling all rock stars. So we're going to be doing sessions not only on petroleum, but on geothermal, critical mineral exploration, hydrology. The EAA is going to be hosting that session for us. We're going to have an environmental, near surface geology session. poster session, exhibitor hall. We're putting together some field trips and some short courses. We haven't worked out the student discounts, but we're going to be offering student discounts, of course. But that's coming up in April 10th through 12th, and the call for abstract is already open. If anybody, master's students or anybody else, I guess, would like to submit a paper. You can go to geogolf2024.org to check that out. Oh, one more thing you have to share. You guys should all start LinkedIn pages. It's one thing that as a professional in the industry, you should start that and post any research or anything work related or education or research related. That's handy to have. I guess that's all I got.
Okay, and you can send us this information and we can try and relay this to the students so they can check out the link to the site. But that's very nice. And thank you all for coming. We're gonna have another GeoChat soon with Rebecca Nuno from SWRI, actually, the Southwest Research Institute.
Oh, I've got one more thing. We're having a STGS happy hour at the Chicken and Pickle on Thursday evening. I think officially starts at 6, but we'll probably have to be there early to get a table because the Rangers and Astros are playing. And I also have some more stickers to give out if you want one of those. Anyway, okay, that's all from me. Thank you. Thanks,
Okay,
Alex.
thank you.
Thank you. You have a good one.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, everyone.